Hi YouTube, it's Kathy and I'm here to do the mid-year book freakout tag. This is a tag I like to do once we finally actually surpass the mid-year. People that post this on like June 2nd, what are you doing? You don't have all the data. And as far as I can tell, this will be the 5th time I've done this tag. I will link all the other years down below. Also, interesting thing, when I went to the YouTube search bar and searched my name and mid-year freakout, none of my videos came up. What are you doing, YouTube? I have a unique name, and if it won't bring up my own videos, what is wrong with your algorithm? Anyway, let's have my first sip of coffee of the day. I haven't actually come up with the answers to any of these questions. All I've really done so far is open up all of the spreadsheets and all of the sheets of talking about what I've read in the past 6 months. That is a total of 95 things, and I am very slightly bummed out because I usually surpass 100 in May, so I'm definitely reading less than I've read before. I hope that I can read 200 this year. That is my hope. That is like my sweet spot. Cashew creamer's not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. If you hear what sounds like cackling in the background, that's my neighbor's chickens. They do that all the time. First question is best book you've read so far. I think that recency bias is a thing, so even though I want to say my favorite book from June, let's look back and see what my favorite things for the last 6 months were. In January, we have Stay Another Day by Juno Dawson, which was great. It's set in my favorite place in the world. It's Christmassy, it's complicated, it's family. I really enjoyed it. In February, we have Razorblade Tears, which needs to be made into an action flick. This was just so good. In March, we had The Girls in the Garden by Lisa Jewell. This is my first book that I read of hers, and I really enjoyed it because there were lots of red herrings, lots of things to throw you off, just trying to figure out what happened. In April, we had Unprotected by Billy Porter, and this is a fantastic memoir. If it's accessible to you, listen to it as an audiobook because Billy just randomly sings at points. It's just such a delight. In May, my only 5-star read was Rosalind Palmer Takes the Cake, and I just loved this. It was just so good. Baking competition, bisexual single mom, different love interests. This was just delightful. And then of course my favorite book from June was a debut called The Summer of Bitter and Sweet, and it was just so excellent, so complex. The characters were complex, had a lot of different things going on, so many different types of representation. I just loved it. So out of all of those, I'm just going to assume that recency bias is going to take over this and say The Summer of Bitter and Sweet. The second question is the best sequel you've read so far, and for this I'm going to my spreadsheet and looking to see what sequels I've read because I don't tend to read all that many. I'm currently reading a sequel, but that doesn't count because this is July. I did read both The Fever King and The Electric Air last month, so that could be my favorite sequel. Let's see if there's anything else on this list. I also read Our Violent Ends, which is the follow-up to These Violent Delights. Is that how that goes? And those are literally the only sequels, so let's just go with The Electric Air. The third question is a new release you haven't read yet, but you want to, and isn't this the answer that every booktube gives, but all of them. In general, I'm not super good at knowing what's coming out, and this year even more so. I feel very disconnected this year, very muddy in my brain and not really knowing things ahead of time, if that makes any sense. Let's take a look at my ARCs list and see what I haven't read. For the sake of just narrowing it down to one, because there are a few ARCs that I have not read because I am falling behind and I'm feeling overwhelmed at all times always. Oh yeah, I made a whole tag about that, I'll link it. Anyway, on May 24th, Brace for Impact came out, and this is a memoir, but it also has to do with roller derby, and for a very short time frame in my life, I was on a roller derby team, so we'll go with that one. Prompt 4 is the most anticipated release for the rest of the year, and because it's the first one that came to my brain, let's go with Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail. This is the follow-up to Delilah Green Doesn't Care, and I really loved that when I read it last December as an ARC, and I really want to read more of Ashley Herring Blake's adult novels because I've loved everything I've ever read by her. Next we have Biggest Disappointment, and I think I've only DNF'd one book this year, and by default that would be it, so let me just double check. Which means my spreadsheet is inaccurate. I've only read 94 books this year and 1 DNF. Ooh, I'm even further behind than I thought. So my biggest disappointment was To the Friend Who Did Not Save My Life. This is a queer book. It's kind of a memoir, but kind of a story. And the perspective is somebody living through the AIDS crisis in Europe and kind of hopping around in a couple of different countries there. But it's written in such a way where I couldn't follow it. You would have these great run-on sentences that would go 2 pages, and I would not be able to follow who they were talking about and why it was important to the story. And ultimately, I DNF'd it. I was happy to try because it was one of the potential picks for LGBTQ in translation, but it just didn't work for me. This one was originally published in French. Biggest surprise is always one like, how do you quantify a surprise? Let me just skim through my list real quick. Ooh. Let's go to one that I read in January because that will make filming this video just that much quicker. One that surprised me was Death Prefers Blondes. All I knew about this is it had to do with teenage drag queens and I was into that, but then this also went so much deeper on like a political global scale and I was not expecting that. I was just expecting heist shenanigans in drag. I got that, but then I got so much more as well. Favorite new author, debut or new to you? I'm gonna have to double check because I don't want to double up my answers, so I don't just want to say Jen Ferguson for The Summer Bitter and Sweet because she's both new to me and a debut author. But let's see what else I can find. Oh my god. If those chickens don't shut up, seriously. I could go with S.A. Cosby because I've read 2 by him this year and enjoyed both of them a lot. I could also go with Lisa Jewell because again, I believe I've read 2 or 3 of hers this year and enjoyed those as well. The only other author that I've read multiples of this year that I can think of off the top of my head is Alexis Hall, but I read his first book either last year or the year before, so that doesn't count. Yeah, let's go with one of those as my answer. You choose which one you think it is. Next we have the question I always skip, which is the newest fictional crush. I don't get fictional crushes, really. I'm Demi, so like, nope. I gotta really get to know you, and yes, you really get to know characters, but also I read a lot of YA and it would be super inappropriate for me to have a crush on a teenager, so I just ignore this question because I don't ever have an answer and I find it kind of inappropriate if I were to have an age inappropriate answer. I always find it ridiculously difficult to answer the next question, which is your newest favorite character. Again, let's scan through some books and try to decide. I mean, Dave Grohl's not a character, he's a real person, so no. I could go with either Horatio or Ben from The King of Infinite Space because they were both very interesting characters to see behind, and then also the Ophelia character, I think her name was Leah. They were all very interesting characters to have the point of view of, and that book in general is just really fascinating. It's a Hamlet retelling, but it's just, ooh, just go read it. I also really like the lead character in A Rip Through Time. I don't even know if it's out yet. Does it come out in August? When does it come out? Let me check. Oh, it came out May 31st. We're fine. That one, she time travels and then has to be really clever about making sure that nobody knows that she's in the body of somebody 150 years before her time. So again, take your pick between those 2 books. Next we have a book that made you cry, and again, I'm going to have to look at my list. I don't know if I've actually sobbed yet this year. I've probably come pretty close because I sometimes read some very sad things, but let's find out. Heartberries is a memoir that I was probably pretty sad while reading because it has some very harsh elements to it and some things that this person went through that really sucked. So I was feeling a lot of feels while I was listening to that. Ooh, this one is interesting. Cruelly Yours by Elvira, that's her memoir. And by that I mean it's Cassandra Peterson's memoir because Elvira is a character she plays. The point in this that probably got me to tear up is she used to be really good friends with Phil Hartman, and knowing how his life ended, I knew that was going to come up at some point in the book, and yeah, that definitely hit me right in the feels, especially some of the things leading up to it that just gave it more of a punch in the face. So we'll go with that one, actually. Next, we're looking for a book that made you happy, and I'm sure there are a bunch on this list. Let's look for one in particular. Also, I love the way these prompts are written because you don't need to find the book that made you the happiest, you just need to find a book that made you happy. I don't deal well with absolutes and favorites, obviously. Let's go with something I read in June, and that's Spin Me Right Round. This is a Back to the Future inspired book about this gay teenager who wants to bring his boyfriend to prom, but has to get a rule overturned where you need to bring somebody of the opposite gender to prom. And then he ends up time traveling back to when his parents were in high school and has to go to high school with them and figure out how to get back to his own time. Obviously, there were difficult situations in that book as well, but he was just so unapologetically himself, and I loved seeing that. Favorite book to film adaptation you've seen this year? I believe this will be many people's favorite. It's not film, it's a show, but really, shut up, I don't care about the distinction. Heartstopper. It was just such a fantastic adaptation. The casting was just so good, the pining, just everything about it was so lovely. Favorite video you've done so far this year? Okay, my brain is Swiss cheese, so we're going to go to the Twitter thread where I have all of my videos for the year, and I'm gonna scroll through it and try to remember some videos that I've put out this year that maybe I've forgotten about. I will also link this thread down below in case you want to check it out. We did the Rent Readathon again this year, which was great. Did an unboxing. That was actually fun because I got my friend Sarah to read the synopsis and then put it over some footage of the place we were staying at the time, so that was fun. I also put out my last few travel vlogs from the trip we took in the summer because I fell behind on editing those because they weren't getting that many views and I just fell behind in general. But the first one I posted in February was when I got to see my friend Eric at Break Even Books in Ontario when I stopped and we just had coffee and hung out a little bit, which was fun. Oh, and of course we went to Vulcan, the nerdiest town in Alberta, so that was another good one. I also believe I put out part 10 and part 11 of the A to Z of Queer Lit. I'm always happy about those videos. I also decided to make a 40 before 40 list, so I actually think I need a couple more books for that, so I'll be sure to link that down below as well in case you have any suggestions for me. And then of course all of my videos to do with the Queer Lit Readathon, I'll just link the playlist down below for you. So yeah, take your pick of one of those as my answer. Next is the most beautiful book you've bought or received so far this year. This is always difficult for me, especially because recency bias is a thing. The Heartbreak Bakery is a beautiful cover. Also, Home Field Advantage, if you take off the dust jacket, I really enjoy that it's gator green underneath and there's some embossing into it or some indents into the cover, and that was a gorgeous detail. The last question of this tag is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? Apparently I need to read about 106 more to make my 200 quota. And then I also need to finish the book on my 12 challenge, which you might have seen going around Twitter and Instagram, where 12 different people recommend a book to you and you read it. I think I've read 7 of those so far. Let me check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I've read 8, so I just need to read 4 of those. So In Deeper Waters, How Story Works, Jade City, and The 30 Names of Night. So those are the ones I need to read for that challenge. Other than that, I've got so many books on so many different lists that I want to read, so I have plenty to choose from. Normally at the end of tags you tag people, but I feel like most of the people in the world have already done this tag because you guys don't wait until the end of June. But if you haven't done it yet, feel free to do this and say that I tagged you. How would you answer any of these questions? Let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that, as always, is down below. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!